Okay, everyone, so we are on part 2 of my January reading wrap-up. So I read 24 books. I know I've said that. I just can't believe it. So I'm just going to finish wrapping up all of the remaining 24 books. So however many books that is, this is how many. And I want to start this off by getting to some of the really good stuff. So not to say that everything else wasn't good, because everything, like, I read really amazing books, but for the Hello 2022 readathon, we are going to start with that. We are going to do the wrap up of my Hello 2022 readathon TBR. Oh, and she has come again. Hello, Olivia. Do you know how many admirers you have? You have a few. You want to just stay on my lap? She is on the lap. So if you see a tail, that is that is what you see there. Olivia, you want to go on the bed? Okay, sometimes she likes to go on the bed. All right, so now for my Hello 2022 TBR, I had 4 books. So the book that I don't have with me is If Beale Street Could Talk, and that is by James Baldwin. I also read The Ones We're Meant to Find, With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, Girl, Woman, Other, and that makes 4 books. And sorry, there's probably like cat hair everywhere. I can't do anything about it. It's a cat problem. So let's start with The Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. So what it is a fiction, contemporary, like adult book, or young adult, I should say, and essentially what happens in the book. So basically, Amani, she is just such a good chef, and she is in high school. So during freshman year, Amani, she became pregnant, and she has now a baby girl. Additionally, Amani, she is living with her abuela, and so she actually loves to go into the kitchen and just start doing her cuisine arts, and she loves to cook. She is an amazing cook. And in the book, Amani, she is presented with a lot of opportunities that she has to rise up to the occasion in order to become just like an amazing chef. And keep in mind, she is only in high school. So, you know, when I start to get emotional, that means I really loved a book. I was so impressed with Amani. And, you know, I really connected with her love of cooking, her love of her family, and just her ambition to go and to travel to a completely different country just to be able to learn how to cook and how to improve her craft. I was blown away with. I think it's the cat hair. I think that, you know, if you are a young adult, if you are in high school, if you are in college, and if you are trying to find something that you are passionate enough about in order to pursue, then I would definitely read this. Sometimes with YAs, you are just provided with a prodigy, and it is a student, or it is just someone who is just incredibly talented. However, I like that this brings you back into reality. Yes, everyone can be very talented at what they do, but it is a learning experience to be able to hone a craft. I knew that I was going to like this book, but I did not realize it was going to have this impact on me right now. 5 stars. Listen to the audiobook. I just connected and loved this book, and I have to talk about the next one because I'm getting a little emotional. Next. Okay, so now we're on to the next one, which is sort of like a sci-fi young adult cat hair. Sorry, not in the book, just on my nose. A dystopian, which is so incredibly outside of my comfort zone. By the way, we had prompts for the Hello 2022 readathon. Readathon is by Books and Lala. It's totally different. Okay, so that was for the prompt, a book with new beginnings, because Amani, she is just starting her new sort of professional life. She is leaving and trying to go off to a college or a professional route or what have you. And The Ones We Are Meant to Find by Joan He. This is a book that you hope to read in 2021 but did not get to. I was meaning to read this like all year, and I finally got to it because of the readathon. So this all sort of takes place in a dystopian world. In this setting, there are just natural disasters. There are those who have to live in what are called eco-cities that are levitating sort of above everyone else. And what you have in this book is you have two sisters. One is Celia and the other is Casey. So now Casey, she is just amazing in terms of science, and she is really doing a lot of significant work in terms of research in order to help benefit humanity that is trying to live in this sort of world. And Celia is totally different. Celia, she is not invested in science. She is more into sort of being able to venture out into the world, though it has its natural disasters, though it has so many elements that are not in their favor. In other words, elements that could potentially harm them. So they are just completely opposed to one another. Celia goes missing, and Casey is determined to find out exactly where Celia is. But Casey has her own secret. Now, there are a lot of things about this book. I don't think that I have an official rating as of right now, but it is probably around 3 stars, and I'm going to tell you why. It was an enjoyable read. I kind of flipped through it quite quickly. I connected with Celia more than I connected with Casey, which is probably how many people found it, but who I have no idea. Even though I am more like science minded, I connected with Celia quite a bit. She just had quite a bit of like humanity to her, and Casey was more of a robotic kind of character, which I think that sometimes in literature, science-y characters can be sort of written to be that way. But hey, I'm a pathology scientist. We're not all robots. Last time I turned the power button on, but I just thought that she could have been a little bit multifaceted. I don't know. Could just be me. And, there was a love interest that, I didn't really connect with very well. I wasn't super invested in the story, but I would most definitely be open to reading more from this author, because even though there are parts that, maybe I didn't mesh well with, I think that she is a very talented author, and I would love to see more from her in the future. So I'm not writing her off. I think that it was enjoyable. And I think that if you enjoy sci-fi, if you enjoy dystopians, if you are interested in the apocalypse, read it. And who knows? You could really enjoy it. So 3 stars. It was a good time, though apocalyptic. Okay, and then these next 2 books were amazing. If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to read this because I don't know how the heck I'm going to get through this. Okay. Told through the eyes of Tish, a 19-year-old girl in love with Fonny, a young sculptor who is the father of her child, Baldwin's story mixes the sweet and the sad. Tish and Fonny have pledged to get married, but Fonny is falsely accused of a terrible crime and imprisoned. Their family set out to clear his name, and as they face an uncertain future, the young lovers experience a kaleidoscope of emotions, despair, and hope. In a love story that evokes the blues where passion and sadness are inevitably intertwined, Baldwin has created 2 characters so alive and profoundly realized that they are unforgettably ingrained in the American psyche. My gosh, this book, what is so eerie about this book is that this book was written in the 70s? Yeah, 1974, and it feels like it could be written today. It was an incredible tragedy, complete injustice. And so you are trying to sit with this couple who are in the face of this incredibly like difficult and tragic situation. Like 5 stars for me is not enough for this book. This book was incredible. Did I find my favorite book of the year? Maybe. And then the last book for the Hello 2022 readathon is, or was, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Love this book. This book is so complex. It is a contemporary. I believe that it is like more like adult, but it is told from the perspective of 11 women and 1 non-binary character. There are so many characters, and it feels like it's quite a lot to undertake when you start reading this book. But each character has their own story, and it's amazing to see how it is connected in this grander like scheme. Like, for instance, you have Emma, a newly acclaimed playwright whose work explores her Black lesbian identity. Her old friend Shirley is a teacher. Oh my gosh, Shirley. Jaded after decades of work in London's funding-deprived schools. You have Carol, which is one of Shirley's former students. You have so many different characters. So you have characters up to 93 years of age. And it was just fantastic. I am not quite sure exactly where I'm going to rate it. I feel like it is definitely between like a 4.5 and a 5. It sticks with me and is completely, I don't know. It's such a unique book. I've never read a book like this before. And one very like awesome aspect of the book is that at first I was a little thrown off. You know, there isn't typical punctuation. Sometimes there are periods, sometimes there are question marks. A lot of the times there aren't. A lot of the times the sentence, it just kind of like flows into the next one, or it's almost sort of like written in verse at certain times as well. I read a little bit about this, and I believe that she had mentioned that this was sort of a experimental way of writing a book. I thought it worked for me really well. I read the physical book, I listened to the audiobook. I recommend both. And yeah, I recommend this book, especially if you want to read a book about, you know, Black womanhood in a UK sort of setting. It was awesome. And so those were the books that I read for the Hello 2022 readathon. Now on to my other books. Gosh, I read so many books. I don't know, man. Okay, so I read this book. It's called No Longer Human, and this is by Osamu Dazai. So you have a main character, Oba, and he does not quite feel the same as everyone else, like not quite human or no longer human. He has a very tragic past, you know, into childhood. You know, he is alienated. He tries to be a comedy sort of clown in order to make people sort of like get off his case a little bit. There are so many things that happen to him in which he no longer thinks of humans as like a positive sort of connotation. And you see how he goes in and out of different relationships over time, and all of the ways in which life just gives him a terrible card again and again. I still, like, I can't give you a rating for this right now because I think I'm still, like, processing certain aspects of it, and I am actually reading a graphic novel right now by Junji Ito, who is a really just amazing graphic novel, like, manga artist, and that is sort of helping me sit in with the story a little bit more. It is referred to as one of the greatest like Japanese classics of all time, and yeah, to say I enjoy it is not really the right word to really say, but it is completely fascinating to read. And yeah, I'm still processing it and am fascinated to sit with the characters just like a little bit longer through a different venue. Okay, and then I have Spinning Silver, which was our Top Shelf Society book club book, and it is like totally beautiful. And I wasn't able to be present at the book club meeting for Spinning Silver. Basically, you have 3 different main characters that are within this like fantasy book that is written by Naomi Novik. Through time, you see that, you know, Miriam, she sort of develops this ability to turn silver into gold. But before that, she picks up from her father, like the money lending business, and she is just so good at it. And her father, not so much, you know, not so much. You also have 2 other sort of perspectives. You have Irina and you have Wanda. Oh yeah, and before I forget, Miriam, she gets sort of whisked away into the land of the Sterek because of her ability. In terms of whether or not I enjoyed this book, so, you know, I can see how many people would enjoy it. Really, I can. If you are into fantasy, I had one major complaint with the book, and that just like pulled me out of the story like all the way throughout, which was the perspective changes. So you go from one character to another, and there isn't really like a flow in terms of who is speaking when, and that just like pulled me out of the story just so much. I was constantly trying to figure out, okay, who is talking when, and I don't know, I just didn't have like the brain capacity or the patience really to do that. Like, I feel that if it was, you know, titled, then sure, like now Miriam is speaking. Now we have Irina speaking. Now we have a different character speaking. Then that would have helped quite a bit, but just like never quite knowing who was talking when. And, you know, I don't think that you should have to get the audiobook to figure it out, but the narrator slightly changes. I don't want to be too harsh, but that really like affected me. I think the story was really great, and I think that the narration was as well. But because of that, like, I am knocking off points, like, and I would have to give it, like, I can't give this like higher than 3 stars because of that. And I know that there are some of you who maybe think that is really, really harsh. I would probably give it somewhere around like 2 to 3 stars. I don't want to sound too negative about this, but yeah, if you are like me and it's very distracting to not know whose perspective is like happening when, then I don't know if this is the book for you. But it might be. And I feel the consensus is that this is a great book. I didn't have any issues with the actual story, just the perspective. So I will leave that with you. All right, let's go with the buddy read book. Okay. Oh, come on, I have to have it somewhere. Like, I should have these out before I start these videos. All right, so we got The Love Hypothesis right here, and you are just about to get a review by a pathology scientist, so I'm going to tell you what's up with this book. This was our buddy read, so every month I do a buddy read on my Instagram channel. Oh my god, Olivia's so cute. I'm going to take a picture. All right, so The Love Hypothesis, it is ridiculous and amazing and just funny, and I liked it more than I thought that I possibly would. Now you have 2 main characters. You have Alex and you also have Olive. So the thing about Olive is that her friend thinks that she is still into this guy named Jeremy, I think. So Olive does not want her friend to think that she likes Jeremy anymore. So what she decides to do, which is just, I don't know about this solution, she decides to kiss another guy in front of Anne to make Anne think that, you know, Olive isn't into Jeremy anymore. But Olive is not into this guy. This is the kiss. Alex is a scientist. He's got his PhD. You know, Olive is getting her education. So she ended up kissing a faculty member And because he was not her supervisor and is not on her like academic, chair, okay. He doesn't directly influence her education. Okay. So anyway, Alex is kind of like, what? Who in the what now? And that starts their fake dating relationship, because now they have to convince everyone that they are in a relationship. And oh my gosh, is it ever awkward? Is it ever funny, cute, charming? I relate to a lot of the science that is within this book. Not the situation, but that's all of situation, and that's what's kind of like going on in this book. My favorite part about this book is the writing. It is just funny and witty and just like, what do they say? Chef's kiss. And it's just great. And obviously with the fake dating relationships, as they progress, who knows if they'll get, feelings for one another, right? Hint, it could get a little spicy. So what I thought of this book, I thought it was great. I would give it maybe like a 4.25, a 4.5. I know everyone gives it a 5-star. There's just like a scene in here that just kind of like totally was like, I was not really into. It wasn't to my liking. But, I think that sorry, I just was yapping away and I had to change my battery. So anyway, I enjoyed the book. 4.25 stars, highly recommend. If you love a fake dating romance and, you want one that is funny and just great, definitely pick up that one. All right, and another book that I read is Minette's Feast. So this is by Susanna Rake. And what I thought about this book, I just thought it was really adorable, really cute. You find out about Julia Child when she was learning, all of her amazing cooking specialties. And, she finds a little cat named Minette. Well, she calls her Minette. And it was just incredibly beautiful and charming. You have in this book beautiful illustrations. There is a glossary, I believe. There is a pronunciation guide, and there's quite a lot of cooking. For the vegans, such as myself, just bear in mind that there is a lot of, meat dishes because Julia Child and she's doing French cuisine, but charming. I gave it 3.75 stars. It was really cute. Okay. Another 5-star read, What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. And so this is a book that is a Canada Reads nominee or finalist. It is a literary fiction book. And what happens in the book is it is surrounding the global refugee crisis. So you have this boy who ends up on an island. And so a 15-year-old girl, I believe, she ends up, helping him. And the book changes perspectives. It's all about their sort of fight for survival and also how they sort of exist within the realm of this crisis through the eyes of a child. It is just completely heartbreaking, but I thought it was a phenomenal book. I listened to the audiobook and, I really want to purchase the physical copy so that I can have it forever. And yeah, I recommend it to you. If you are looking for a book, a Canadian book by a Canadian author, I definitely recommend that one for sure. And I am running out of time. Let's do the next ones. So we have a 5-star book. This is called The Boy and the Bindi. And this is a book that was by Vivek Shreya, and this book was just great. I really loved the illustrations. I thought that the story was very beautifully written, and you learn about a boy who is just completely enamored by the bindi. So that is the red dot that is commonly worn by Hindu women. And so he just has this propensity, this desire to wear one. And you see how his mother interacts with him in this book and what sort of blossoms from there. I loved it. 5 stars. I love Vivek Shreya. And finally, the last 3 books that I read were surrounding the Holocaust. So I read 3 books. The first was a graphic novel, and this was by survivors of the Holocaust. It was edited by Kath Shackleton, and it was illustrated by Zane Whittingham. So it just basically goes over 6 stories from children and I guess sort of a middle grade sort of perspective of children that were alive during the time of the Holocaust. And you learn also what ended up happening to each of their respective families and what happened to each of them, whether or not they were in Auschwitz or if they were able to escape with their family, or what ended up happening to their different families. So this is a very difficult topic, but I feel that the graphic novel was done so well. And through the graphic novel, the illustrations are done with a very like you feel intimidated when you are reading it, because certain individuals are just drawn in such a way which I think was really effectively done by the illustrator. So 5 stars for that. So then I have I Will Come Back for You, A Family in Hiding During World War II, and this is by Mary Sabina Russo. So this is nonfiction. So it is described as nonfiction. It is based off of the author's grandmother and her experience. I thought that this was a really good story that was written, and it informed me of what was happening in Rome at the time of World War II and what it was like for a Jewish family to live in Italy at that time. It is a very quick read, but I think a very good one. So like 4.5 to 5 stars, very, very good. And finally, my very last book. It is called The Tree in the Courtyard, Looking Through Anne Frank's Window. This is by Jeff Gottesfield with Peter McCarty as the illustrator. So this is a children's book. So this is a story that is told from the perspective of the tree that was in front of Anne Frank's house. Now, I thought that this was really, really beautiful. Everything has sort of a sepia kind of color tone to it. And what I found really interesting is at the end, you're told about like what inevitably happened to that tree. And there are seedlings that were taken from the tree after it was struck by lightning and planted in various locations. It noted certain locations that were in the States, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were others in other countries as well. So definitely a 5-star book. And I think that is everything. If I missed one, I will include it in my description. But yeah, thank you so much for watching our January wrap up. It was like a phenomenal reading month for me. I don't really read like this usually. I feel like part 2 is going to be a lot longer than part 1, but who knows after editing. Let me know how your January went. I think that the readathon quite helped. And you didn't hear it from me, but there may be some more readathons in the future. So make sure you look out for those ones. Anyhow, I will let you go. Look out for reading sprints, look out for more videos. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.